Cool. So, as promised, we're going to make some forces now to actually tear this thing apart. So, create a geometry node here out in the main area. We'll call it forces. And the kind of forces that I want to use are metaballs. What are metaballs? Metaballs are essentially little fields that are defined by a center and a radius and a weight. At the center, the weight is what it says. It's 2. As we move away towards the radius, it will degrade by some function. These are all different ones that you can look up, but we'll just keep it the default for now. Who cares? When the field value crosses 1, once it gets less than 1, because remember it's starting at 2 and it's going towards 0, so around here apparently is where it reaches 1, that's when it draws this kind of, mesh looking thing. Really the field will extend to maybe around here. This is where it reaches 0. Metaballs, they've been in CG probably almost as long as there's been CG. They're great for visualizing liquid sims and stuff. They're really these blobby looking things. So if you've ever seen, especially like in maybe an old CG thing, 2 blobby balls kind of like doing this kind of thing, these are metaballs. The reason how it can do this is that, remember, it starts at 2 here, it's going to 1, and then it's reaching 0 maybe somewhere out here. So if you are around here, if this is 1 and this is 0, then that means this must be 0.5, like right around where the tip of this arrow is. When this 0.5 reaches the 0.5 of this guy's 0.5, well, now they've added together, it's 1. So it starts to mesh there. And so, we're going to use this to define our explosions, because our explosions are similar. They're strongest in the middle. They taper off as they go out. So you can put a whole bunch of metaballs together to create, different shaped explosions if you want. That's all well and good. We're not going to do that. We're just going to stick with just a regular 1 ball here and assign it a force. To do that, you can just use the force sop, which is simple enough. All it's doing is it's creating a primitive attribute, in our case for radial force, called F radial. Force radial. And the radial force is what we want for an explosion. It starts at the center and it blows out in a, concentric rings, if you will. You can also do this way, where you have a direction axial force, where it's going along the direction, and maybe it spins around it with a vortex. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. I'm going to limit it to, again, just the radial force this time. And just from prior experience for a sim at this scale, I'm going to start at 400. We're going to play around with this and actually find out where we want to be. But let's just start at some number, which I'm going to say is 400 for now. I'm also going to want to, let's actually place this thing. I'm going to turn on that guy so we can kind of see it. This is more or less, what the building looks like. So let's actually place this metaball now in the proper spot so that it could be, kind of an explosion coming in from just right from beneath the surface of the thing. So something like that, maybe like a little bit more, I don't know. That's probably fine. It's also maybe like a third of that high. Something like kind of like a pancaking kind of thing. So something like that. And then we can move it. Doesn't really matter. We don't really know where exactly we want, but just to demonstrate how this will work, we'll actually end up setting up, again, a kind of a pseudo-random thing where we can try explosions in different spots. We'll wedge it and see which one we end up liking the most. So I'm going to place this somewhere like between floors so that we can kind of maybe see inside of the rooms or something. So there we go, something like that. And I'll put a null here, and I'll say, we're already in a geometry node called forces, so I'm just going to call it out. Now, something to consider is that this explosion is essentially active all the time. The field is always there, and as long as we're going to sample this field in a moment, it's always on. There's a bunch of different ways to handle this. We could We could animate the scale down of the metaball to 0. We could animate this thing down to 0. I like to keep my values like set and not keyframe them. Instead, I'll just keyframe just one thing over here. We're gonna make a switch, and we're gonna switch to nothing every once in a while. So I'll say something like, "Hey, if it's frame 3, then this will evaluate to true on frame 3." As you can see in our little graph here, pretty simple graph. Nothing, nothing, true, nothing, nothing. When this is 1, that means it will choose input 1. Of course, we want the opposite of that, so I'm going to switch the reversals here, or switch the order. So now on frame 3 only, we see the metaball. On the other frames, we don't. So anybody that's looking at this out is going to get nothing, 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 metaball, nothing, nothing, nothing. Cool.